Part 2. When Chiang Kai-shek decided to play his cards right. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. As Radio Tokyo broadcast Japan's readiness to surrender on August 10, 1945, both Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong knew that a race for influence had begun. Only 11 days later, before any formal surrender ceremony had even taken place, communist guerrillas launched bold offensives, attempting to seize control of Shanghai, Wuhan, and Tianjin. Joseph Stalin had sternly warned the chairman against launching an intervention too early. The CCP had nowhere near the forces of the Kuomintang, and taking the blame for initiating a civil war was a political luxury Mao could simply not afford. But the chairman was undeterred. In his mind, Stalin's misplaced conservatism prevented the CCP from making a true revolution. Explosions rocked China's eastern seaboard. The defenders, men formerly loyal to Wang Jingwei's puppet regime, mounted fierce resistance as Chiang Kai-shek rushed his troops across the former territory. Although Mao scored some minor victories, like in the Baoying region, setbacks in larger urban centers were more significant. The communists were unable to break the beleaguered defenders before the Kuomintang, with modest American logistical aid, reinforced their positions. By September 9th, Japanese General Okamura Yasutsugu formally surrendered to Chiang's deputy in the auditorium of the Central Military Academy in Nanjing. At this stage, two things were undeniable. A full-scale resumption of the Chinese Civil War had begun, and, at least from Washington's perspective, the communists were to blame. For President Truman, the chaos of 1945 demanded clarity. He dispatched a mission led by George Marshall to determine how to achieve a unified, democratic China. Marshall initially believed a ceasefire and a restored united front could accomplish this. But with the August offensives already ruining any chance of peace and reconciliation, he concluded a united China with the communists was unrealistic. A shocking discovery. Many Americans feared direct U.S. intervention would provoke Soviet involvement. Nonetheless, to aid the Nationalists, Truman ramped up support for the Kuomintang. Military aid and advisors permeated the Kuomintang's government and command structure. While Marshall reluctantly became Chiang Kai-shek's advisor, at his insistence, the Kuomintang slowly implemented fiscal, political, and anti-corruption reforms. The relationship between the two men was interesting. Marshall saw Chiang as a stubborn autocrat. Meanwhile, Chiang was hardly ready to allow Marshall to set his strategy. He was still traumatized by his fierce rivalry with the American commander in China, Burma, and India, Joseph Stilwell, whom Marshall had strongly supported. Marshall's tenure as Chiang's main advisor didn't last long. When he was promoted to serve as Secretary of State in January of 1947, Albert Wedemire replaced him as Chiang's personal advisor. The two men got along much better. Wedemire's deep anti-communist convictions, as well as his successes against Japan in the Second World War, earned him a much greater sense of trust from the Generalissimo. With Wedemire's help, Chiang went further. The April 1947 government reorganization purged many of the most corrupt and reactionary elements in Nanjing. By November, a new constitutional government was formed, guided by American advisors and investments. The economy slowly but surely began to recover. All across nationalist-held China, inflation decreased, and the reconstruction of communications, mines, and industries provided much-needed economic revenue. Chiang also publicly initiated the first careful steps toward land reform. Very careful steps, of course. While Kuomintang reforms progressed slowly, military reorganization under U.S. guidance paid off. In March 1947, Yan'an, the communist capital, fell to nationalist forces. The situation in Manchuria remained interesting. Eager to seize the initiative, Nationalists launched a powerful attack in May 1947. Though Communists resisted fiercely, they, temporarily, fled the area before the Nationalist armies under Bai Chongxi. Despite Mao's land reform popularity and propaganda, Communists lacked support to resist concentrated nationalist assaults. Their popularity was hampered by the Kuomintang's slow reforms and the lingering blame for plunging China into chaos in 1945. Though far from defeated in Manchuria, the Communists were rapidly losing momentum in a war where defeat engenders defeat. There had been few major victories, and the KMT's agenda undermined the CCP's platform. Eager to reclaim momentum, the PLA seized the offensive in fall 1947, using tanks and artillery, largely accidentally dropped by the Soviets, severing the critical railway west of Shenyang and isolating major nationalist garrisons. With some of their best forces cut off, the nationalist government had to choose: order a breakout or resort to an airlift. Both were risky, but the government chose the latter, even when the airlift relied almost entirely on American forces to resupply nationalist strongholds. The sieges of Changchun, Jinzhou, and Shenyang saw some of the bloodiest combat of the Civil War. Fierce house-to-house fighting reminded many nationalist veterans of the brutal defense for Shanghai 10 years prior. Communist artillery thundered overhead while Kuomintang planes flew sortie after sortie to assist defenses and guarantee supplies. The situation was precarious, since the winter freeze only added to the miserable conditions on both sides. Mao did not get the victory he desperately needed. With the tactical momentum in Manchuria stalling, the Communists decided on a gambit. Mao shifted focus to the southwest. Communist forces steadily gained ground near the Shandong Peninsula. If they could overwhelm nationalist defenses, it would consolidate control north of the Yangtze, cut off Beijing, and make continued air support to Manchurian cities impossible. In March 1948, Communist forces struck with full force, launching wave after wave against nationalist strongholds. The continued defense of the three besieged cities offered enormous propaganda boosts for the nationalists, invigorating their morale. So when waves of guerrilla fighters barreled down on defenders near the High River in Beijing, the men were motivated to stand firm. Mao's forces battered nationalist positions around Xuzhou, but Jiang's men would not budge. Again, Kuomintang air superiority proved crucial. In one lucky incident, a flanking maneuver by General Chen Yi was narrowly spotted by aerial reconnaissance, enabling the Nationalist Second Army to deliver a crushing counterattack. An entire communist army, 170,000 strong, was annihilated, and General Chen Yi retired early. With Chen Yi's defeat, the Kuomintang launched a full-scale counteroffensive. The communist lines were in disarray as they failed to find a clear response. With support from Huang Wei's 12th Army from the west, nationalist forces swept through the plain, seizing vast territories across Henan and Shandong. With nationalists arriving in force to support Beijing and Tianjin's defense, Mao realized the precarity of his position, retreated behind the Great Wall east of the capital, hoping to turn the tables there. The nationalists advanced far faster than expected. Communist commanders had predicted it would take weeks for Jiang's forces to reach the Great Wall. Instead, they arrived in just 20 days. The nationalists advanced steadily along the inner Gulf of the Bohai Sea, retaking all the strong points along the Tianjin-Shenyang railroads that the communists had taken the year prior. Without adequate time to prepare a united defense, communist forces were pushed back time and time again by the relentless firepower of the Kuomintang's newly invigorated army. Simultaneously, a large nationalist force reinforced by the garrison in Beijing veered northwest in an attempt to seize the logistics hub of Zhangjiakou. Although the harsh mountainous terrain favored the Red defenders, concentrated aerial bombardment softened defenses enough for nationalist troops to penetrate southwest of the city. Communist forces scrambled to contain the breach. But the military superiority of US-trained and supplied Kuomintang units was too powerful to overcome. Entire divisions changed their minds and switched alignments to the Nationalists, jeopardizing any attempt by the PLA to restore front lines. The southern thrusts of the Nationalists advanced far less rapidly. Entrenched communists made the Nationalists pay in blood for every stretch of ground gained. But Jiang, adamant that a decisive victory was within reach, ordered his armies to continue. In July 1948, the Nationalist armies engaged the PLA in a crucial battle at Shanhai Pass, where the Great Wall of China meets the sea. The Communists were entrenched and numerous. As a result of the Generalissimo's impatience, Nationalist armies suffered staggering casualties attempting to break through. Repeated aerial attacks and naval bombardments sought to dislodge the Communists, but every time a concentrated rush forced the Nationalists back. Overwhelming the Communists here was impossible. But while Chiang was pinning the Communist armies at the pass, the 7th Army under Huang Baitao took a detour, broke through the lines near Luangxian, and rushed for Changli near the shore. As the banner of the White Sun was raised at the local railway station, the Communists realized they were surrounded. With nowhere to go, Nationalist armies closed in on the pass from both sides. Encircled and overwhelmed, over 500,000 Communist troops were captured. Hundreds of thousands defected to the Nationalists, while generals like Lin Biao and Deng Xiaoping were captured. Mao's defeat was total. Soon after, the White Sun banner adorned the top of the Tiananmen Gate. Below, thousands of people gathered to witness the Generalissimo make a speech. With his high-ranking military advisors and generals next to him, Chiang Kai-shek declared the end of the Civil War and the victory of the armed forces of the Republic of China. The military parade of the anti-communist armies made clear to all who watched that the Kuomintang, against all odds, had asserted itself as the ruling force in the Middle Kingdom. Congratulatory telegrams came in soon after, with President Truman's message being especially delighted in tone. With their crushing defeat at Shanhai Pass, the military machine of the Chinese Communist Party was shattered. In a steady series of cleanup campaigns reminiscent of the encirclement campaigns in the 1930s, Chiang's forces eliminated lingering communist cells in southern China, Shandong, and Manchuria. Those communists lucky enough to avoid encirclement, including Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai, retreated into Mongolia under the protection of Joseph Stalin. They continued to make trouble on the Manchurian frontier. Although the 1947 Constitutional Convention had curbed the most excessive aspects of Kuomintang rule, the iron grip of the White Sun on the Republic's politics was as tight as ever. Opposition parties were unheard of, as Jiang repeatedly banned emerging movements with the accusation of subversion. Additionally, the Generalissimo set his sights on reincorporating former Xinjiang and Tibet, which he annexed in 1949 and 1950 respectively. By the mid-1960s, China once again sought its place in the world. While firmly anti-communist, it resisted full integration into the Western Bloc. Instead, the Republic of China pursued a place in the world as a great power, free from imperialist influences. Relations with the United States remained amiable on the surface, while ties with the United Kingdom, France, and Portugal were tense. None were as strained, however, as the outright hostile relationship with the Soviet Union. And when a series of border clashes erupted in the mid-1960s, the balance of power in Asia once again stood on a knife's edge. Thanks for watching.